application. Okay, so so this is our middleware application. Okay, it's a GraphQL, it's a Django GraphQL application. So what I will do while these images are being built, I'm gonna start this application locally, so we get a sense of how it works. Okay, so we're building these images right now. What I'm gonna do now, I'm actually gonna open up all of these applications in an IDE, so we get a sense of what they look like. So let me run this application locally. So I'm going to say, which Python am I using? Okay, so I want to make sure I'm using right. So this is the Python virtual environment we created, and we're using the Python that is installed within that virtual environment. Okay, so I'm going to say Python manage.py. So this is the manage.py file, right? So that's in Django. That's how you run a Django application. You say Python manage.py. So that's how you manage the application. And then I'm going to say run the server. Run server. Okay. So when I start, if you noticed in our Django application, we've created models. But when you start the app for the first time, Django doesn't know about the models as far as the database, right? So Django is saying, hey, I see models, but I don't see them in a database. So you need to run a Python migrate function, right? So you need to run a Python migrate function, and that's how these models sitting in this model file get mirrored, right? So there'll be a mirror of these models in the database, right? So the idea is what Django does. Django has a concept of what they call an ORM, object relational map, right? So the idea is for each one of your objects, for each one of your Django models, there will be a database table, right? So the compute model, so what you're looking at here is basically a high-level description of a database table. So there will be a database table created for you by Django with the name called compute, and it would have a table. It would have columns where there will be a name, a slug, a description. It will do that for each one of your models, right? So there will be a user table, and the user table will have these columns. And what you're seeing here is the data type for that column, right? So if you ever taken any database class before, if you're familiar with databases, you know for each table there's a set of columns, and each one of those columns is a specific data type, and this is how you basically specify them, right? You're saying the name is a character field and the max length is 200, right? So basically we need to run a Django migrate command. So I'm going to stop the server, and I'm going to say Django migrate. Right? So what this command does, it then create modifications to the database to reflect the parameters on your models, right? That way your database and your models have a one-to-one relationship, right? So all your models are reflected in the database with all the fields and the types of those fields, right? So now that I have that, I'm going to say manage.py create super user, right? So what this does, it let me create a default user for the app, right? So like an admin type account. So I'm gonna say let that be right. And I'm just gonna give it a simple password for demo purposes. I'm gonna say Jannah IO. Okay. So what that does, it creates a user for us, and it's an admin user. And so when we run the server, now I'm gonna run the server, right? So the server is running at localhost at port 8000. So I can log into that. So if I try to log in, you see, oh, it says, oh, I don't know this URL you're trying to log in. The only URLs I have available, admin and GraphQL, right? So these are sub URLs. So the reason for that, if you look at the Django application, so Django has a concept called URL.py, right? So this is why you specify all your URLs, right? So in our app, we say the available URL, sub URLs. So our app is admin and GraphQL, right? So this is the admin interface. This is the GraphQL API, right? So if I try to go into the app, it will say, oh, what are you doing? You're trying to go into the root? No, you can only go into admin or GraphQL. Okay, so now if I take this and I append it here, if I say admin, right? So it puts us in the admin interface. So here I can log in with the admin account we created, right? So this is the back end into Django. Basically, if you have a Django website and you want to get through a back door, this is one way you can log in into a Django application from the back end. Okay, and what you see here, this is a web representation of my models, right? So if you go back to our models, right, you'll see these are the models we have created. Let me collapse these. So collapse, 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 collapse. Right. So if you look at the back, if you look at the code, we've created these models. We have a site, user, boot, network, storage, compute, UX, feedback, workflow. So when you log into the web front, if you log into the admin view, you see these models here. And if you remember, we had created a super user here, right? So if we click on users here, you'll see we already have one user entered into the database already, right? Right? So what we're going to do, I'm going to add another user here from the web admin. Let's give this user the same password. Today is a super user 2. Let's call him Baba.